You're listening to A Day Podcast. Podcast for all things creative. โรงเรียนนานาชาติ International School Podcast. Learning from the expats.
สวัสดีครับคุณผู้ฟังครับผมเต้สุวจนกลิ่นสุวรรณนะครับและขอต้อนรับทุกท่านเข้าสู่โรงเรียนนานาชาตินะครับรายการที่จะนำเสนอเรื่องราวของชาวต่างชาติที่มาอยู่และทำงานในประเทศไทยโดยนอกจากวิชาความรู้เคล็ดลับต่างๆแล้วรวมถึงแรงบันดาลใจจากพวกเขานะฮะเราจะได้เรียนรู้ภาษาอังกฤษและฝึกฟังสำเนียงภาษาอังกฤษที่หลากหลายจากทั่วโลกอีกด้วยนะครับโรงเรียนนานาชาติเอพิโซดนี้ครับเราจะได้โอกาสพูดคุยกับชาวต่างชาติที่หลงรักประเทศไทยรวมถึงหลงรักแนวเพลงแบบไทยๆนะครับเขาคนนี้ครับทั้งหน้าตาและเสียงเพลงของเขาเนี่ยคนไทยคุ้นหูคุ้นตาเป็นอย่างดีนะคุ้นกันมา20กว่าปีเห็นจะได้นะครับแต่สิ่งที่เราอาจจะไม่คุ้นก็คือเสียงพูดภาษาอังกฤษของเขาคนนี้นั่นเองขอต้อนรับแขกรับเชิญของเราในวันนี้ครับเจ้าของฉายาฝรั่งหัวใจไทยหรือฝรั่งหัวใจลูกทุ่งคุณโจนาสแอนเดอร์สันครับสวัสดีครับพี่โจนาสครับ
สวัสดีครับสวัสดีครับขออนุญาตแก้ไขตั้งแต่ต้นรายการเลยนะครับ
ยังไงฮะ
ไม่ใช่แขกรับเชิญฮะฝรั่งรับเชิญครับ
โอเคโดนเป็น1ดอกนะฮะโจนาส1สุปจน0นะครับขอบคุณครับพี่ นะฮะทีนี้หลายๆคนเนี่ยเชื่อว่าคุณผู้ฟังเนี่ยฟังมาถึงจุดนี้แล้วก็คงจะร้องเอ๊ะเหมือนกันนะฮะเพราะคำถามว่าเอ๊ะเหมือนกับที่ทีมงาน Day Podcast ถามก่อนนี้ว่าจริงๆแล้วเราเคยฟังพี่โจนาสเนี่ยพูดภาษาอังกฤษไหมนะส่วนมากเลยจะตอบว่าไม่นะฮะบางคนถึงถามว่าพี่โจนาสเขาพูดไทยชัดขนาดนี้เขาพูดภาษาอังกฤษได้จริงเหรอวะประมาณนี้เขาเป็นฝรั่งนะครับนะฮะ Okay so let's prove that fact by getting this show running in English shall we พี่โจนาส
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Yes, I do speak English.
Of course you do.
Verified.
ครับผม and thank you for coming to โรงเรียนนานาชาตินะครับ First question พี่โจนาส how do we pronounce your name in Swedish?
Okay, in Swedish, Jonas is actually a very common name, especially around the time where I was born in the 70s. But in Swedish, it's Jonas.
Jonas.
Yeah.
Jonas Anderson.
Jonas Andersson.
Andersson ด้วย
ใช่ครับ
โอเคความรู้ใหม่นะฮะแต่ทุกวันนี้เวลาคนเดินสวนพี่โจนาสเนี่ยเรียก Jonas เนี่ย do you like turn around?
If I'm in Sweden and people call me Jonas, yes, I would obviously respond to that. Yes,
but not in Thailand.
I've never heard it here. I've heard Jonas a little bit, but people call me Jonat.
Okay.
So that's what I'm used to.
Ciao. Okay. Now, before this show is over, we're surely going to ask you about your trick in learning and becoming so fluent in the Thai language. So perhaps the audience may adapt that same method in learning English as well.
I hope that would be a small little trick or a key or something for everyone to adapt to use in their learning of English.
All right, cool. Okay, so first things first. All right, you were born in Sweden before moving to Thailand at the age of 9. Right? So what was life like before moving here?
Well, actually, it's a bit hazy, the memories, because I was very small. Sweden is a very typically Northern European country, so it's very clean, it's very organized, it's sometimes a bit boring, but it's especially at that time it was a very safe country, so kids could just walk to school. The couple years that I was in Sweden in school, I would walk to school every day. Once I got back, I was just on my own, even though I'm thinking back, I was only 7 years old.
Okay.
So the world has changed a lot, but back then there was no sense that it was unsafe or anything like that. So biking around with my younger brother and with friends and playing until my parents came back and it was dinner time, and
right.
So it was a different experience in that sense. And I don't even think that's the way life is in Europe nowadays. I think things have changed a lot.
Right.
A lot of development, a lot of danger that's come in to society in all the countries all around the world.
Right. So if I were to ask you, what would be your most vivid memory of Sweden?
Actually, my most vivid memory from Sweden is not a very happy one. But, the things that really have an impact are the things you remember. My most vivid memory of Sweden is 2 accidents that I had.
Oh.
One time when I was hit by a car.
Oh, you just said Sweden was safe.
Yes, but I was not safe.
Oh, okay. So the entire country was safe except for you.
Except me,
okay.
Yes. No, I mean, it was not the fault of the driver. It was the fault of an overeager little boy who just ran ahead of the little walk and don't walk sign, and my eyesight is quite bad. I'm short-sighted. You can see I'm wearing glasses today. So I think part of the road we crossed had a green man, and then the other part had a red man, but I didn't bother looking at that. I just kept going.
So you're short-sighted and colorblind as well.
Well, maybe so at the time. I don't know.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I got hit by a car.
I'm sorry about that.
So that was a memory that's very. It's left quite an impression. And then another. I think I'm a little bit clumsy, maybe. Sum sam, and so a bit prone to accidents. But other than that, I have very fond memories of my grandmother. In Swedish, we call her farmor.
Farmor.
Farmor means farmor, which means father's mother. So they like in Thai, they actually separated in Swedish.
Okay.
In English, it's all grandma and gramps.
Okay, so what's yai in Swedish then?
Is murmur.
Murmur.
Yeah, murmur.
So your great grandmother would be murmur.
Actually, they use gammal murmur. They don't. Gammal means old. So old murmur. They don't use murmur's mur. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right, so that was in Sweden, right?
Yes.
So you still have family there in Sweden?
Yes. Well, around the time I was about 19, my parents and the rest of my siblings moved back to Sweden. So they're all there.
Oh, okay.
The rest of my family's all there, except two of my brothers are working in Norway, which is kind of the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And you visit them quite often, or do you like video call nowadays?
Well, yeah, thankfully the internet has made communication a lot easier. I do try to get back to visit fairly regularly.
Right.
In fact, my plans currently are a little bit up in the air because I was planning for the first time to go back to Sweden for Christmas.
Oh.
Because usually Christmas is always a very busy time. As an artist, you have a lot of shows around New Year's, so it was never possible to go. But I've always thought, hey, it's a very traditional thing to experience. So I got to go back to Sweden for Christmas, and this was the year that was supposed to happen. And now COVID happened, and I guess we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see what happens with that.
Looking forward to that as well, huh? All right. So what made you and your family come to Thailand in the first place?
My parents had another family they knew that had moved to Thailand. My parents are in the charity field of work. They do charity work, and there was another family in the field that had come to Thailand, and I don't think that they were really thinking of Thailand, but this other family gave a very good report. Back then, things were done by mail, by post. It's a thing. There's an envelope.
You gotta
actually
lick the stamp
write.
and all. Yeah.
You got to buy a stamp, put it in, and stick it in the mailbox. Yeah,
Okay.
it was a thing back then. So they were saying, hey, you should come out this way, for a visit at first if you like, and see what it's like. And so we came back in the early 80s, and they fell in love with Thailand, and we stayed.
It was Korat, right, at that time?
Early on, we moved up to Korat, yes. Yeah, so they were here for 10 years. 2 of my brothers were born in Thailand, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And everyone was very fond of it. They still are. They feel that Thailand is still part of them in some way. Yeah.
Okay, so you were 9 years old, European boy coming all the way to Thailand. What was your earliest memory about Thailand?
My very first memory was a very impactful memory of hot. Hot and humid. As soon as we stepped out of the plane onto that, that step, and the ladder, that ladder going down onto the tarmac, it was just like, whoa, okay, this is a whole new experience of hot that I've never had.
Oh, okay.
But then that day it was very exciting for a little boy because we felt this intense heat, and then there was a massive thunderstorm.
Okay.
And so it was like rain and thunder, and it was just like very exciting, but it was so unique that it was raining cats and dogs, as we say in English, but it wasn't cold.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just nice, it was just fresh and cool, and we thought, hey, this is great, because in Sweden, rain always comes with cold. It's always quite cold when it rains, even if it's the summertime. Then I really had a very warm feeling of welcome from Thai people from very, very early on.
Okay.
after arriving here and walking around in the neighborhood, I've always liked to explore, walk around and people would just invite me in, and talk to me, the little white boy. I was like a Martian or something, I guess.
Right, but of course at that time you couldn't speak Thai.
No, it was just like sign language and just sort of somehow making each
So
other
they'd be like,
understood.
yo, ฝรั่ง มา
Yeah, hey you.
Okay.
Come, hey you.
And you went in their house.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't afraid of anybody.
Okay.
And I remember, and this is so vivid, I went into one person's house and they had like a mountain of rambutans or ngok.
งะ uh-huh.
And this was such a weird creature of a fruit that I'd never seen before.
Oh, okay, no ngah in Sweden.
There's no ngok in Sweden. Nowadays, I suppose you could probably find some. Back
Okay.
then, what's this hairy red thing, And it was like, you can eat that.
Okay.
And this homeowner, this neighbor, she's like, hey, taste, and I don't know how we made each other understood or how we communicated. I can't remember that, but I remember the ngok being so tasty. I just sat there just like munching away on all of her
Okay.
ngok, I
Good
think
job she didn't have durian.
yeah, exactly. I think I must have eaten about a kilo of ngok, and she was there trying to tell me what it was called, and it's like ngok, and it's like yeah. Because in English or Swedish, we never start our words with an ng or a ngong
Yeah, it's
sound.
more like a nasal sound.
Yeah. You have words like sing where the ending consonant is a ngongu sound, but we never start a word with that. So it's like
All right. So it was a bit ngong for you.
It was pretty ngong, but
Okay.
From that day I learned how to say ngongu.
All right, cool.
And ngok.
All right. So apart from that, apart from the weather, the climate, the fruits, I mean, was there like a big cultural shock for you as well?
Actually, that's the thing. It wasn't a culture shock at all. To me, it was just one big fun adventure.
Okay.
And I remember that neighbors were just... there was a neighbor that had a pool. They just let us swim in their pool. Another neighbor took us on a tuk-tuk to the local market to have guitiao.
Okay.
And that was the first time I rode in a tuk-tuk, the first time I used chopsticks. I never tried them back in Sweden before. And so it was all like so many new, colorful, flavorful adventures. And I never felt any culture shock.
Okay.
But I did sometimes feel a little bit like an alien. Like I was so different. I looked so different. I felt like I could feel that everyone was looking at me. I could feel that people wanted to touch the hair on my arm or pinch my cheeks, touch the blonde hair on my head, But it wasn't a bad feeling. It was just a little bit like you're the zoo animal or something that everyone wants to look at, and of course that's natural.
So, but you don't feel offended?
No. I didn't feel offended because even if there was a sense that I was kind of a weird stranger, but they're so warm and friendly. They're so full of smiles. They're laughing. They're trying to teach you things and tell you things that any feeling of offense or anything like that just completely goes away very quickly.
How about nowadays? There are lots of foreigners, especially Europeans or Caucasians,
Yes.
who feel very offended when Thai people call them farang. Are you one of them?
No, absolutely. I've always just considered that's what you call us. That's what you call the white people. Right?
Okay.
Farang. It's to me there's not an offense in it because it's not a slur. It's not a racial slur.
So, Jonas, living and growing up in Thailand, I mean, which school did you go to? How were you educated?
So this was a challenge for my family because as soon as we came here, within like a couple months, we moved up to Korat, as we said. And I think at the time there was at the most 2 international schools. And frankly, we could never have afforded to go to those schools anyway. It was mostly for diplomats and so on. But fortunately for us, my mother is actually a teacher. She only just retired from teaching.
Okay.
Very recently. She's 68 now. 69. And so as a teacher, of course, she was very determined to make sure that we could have a good education despite a very unique circumstance that we were in. So she researched, and actually that's part of the reason we switched to English, is she actually found a correspondence course from the U.S.
Okay.
and like bought a whole series of books and everything from the U.S. and had them shipped into Thailand and taught us. So nowadays you call that homeschooling. Back then that wasn't even a term. Then they called it distance learning or correspondence course. เรียนทางไกล And so that was so my education has been homeschooling.
Right.
And then
So
later on
your
I
classmates would be your two brothers.
Yeah, my brother and my sister.
Right. So what was the first Thai word that you've learned? Not was it?
No, it was actually would have been in the top 5 maybe. Not would have been in the top 5. The first one of course was Sawadee Krap. Sawadee Krap. In fact, I had some Falang friends and they were trying to teach the other Falang friends and there were very few Falangs back then, but the small group of Falangs that we knew made a little song of like some startup phrases.
Okay. You still remember that song?
Yeah, I remember it.
Can we hear it?
Sawadee Krap. Sawadee Krap. Sawadee Krap. Sawadee Krap.
Okay.
You can probably tell it was written by non-Thais because they didn't put the proper tones in the melody. So it's Sawadee Krap is right, but then it's Sawadee Krap is no longer right.
Right. I mean, otherwise you have to be Sutichayun or something like that.
Yes, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Krap.
So when and how, Jonas, did you become so fluent in Thai?
It was very organic. It was just a very natural process. By nature, I'm quite social. I have quite a private side to me, but once I'm with people, I'm very interactive. I don't stay in a corner. I'm not quiet, and I love interacting. I love engaging with people, and it seems like you're just forced to do it. You just got to jump out there and start talking, and so. It's very hard to answer when did I learn to speak Thai or how long did it take me, but I would say after about 2 years I felt quite comfortable, but I didn't have a very big vocabulary. So I could do all the regular stuff, go to the market, buy things, order
daily
food,
routine,
and so I didn't have a deep understanding or a lot of big words, but I could make myself understood and I could communicate very, very fluently.
What's the most difficult Thai word that you've accomplished?
The most difficult Thai word? Wow, that's a big one. Well, the most difficult Thai words to speak are Racha Sap. And
what's Racha Sap in English?
Racha Sap, I guess you would call it royal language.
Royal language.
Yeah, there's no such thing in English, as you know, so we don't have a context for that.
Yeah.
But Racha Sap is very difficult. I remember that I had to be an MC at an event, and I had to explain about one of King Rama IX's royal compositions. And of course, it's full of all kinds of Racha Sap words, so it was very stressful for me. And even back before I was an artist, there was one time an event, I was, as a volunteer, I was assisting the Red Cross, and Pratep, Her Royal Highness Princess Sirinthorn, was going to be at the event.
Yeah.
And so I had to do like a drill session, like a training session of how to refer to her, to relate to her, to talk to her, and it was very, very, very stressful. The most
a great
stressful
experience.
thing. Yeah, I mean it's enriching, because after that you can say the words and you start to understand the terminology and the idea.
Right.
So I don't regret it at all. Yeah, because these things they enrich you,
Right. So growing up in Korat, I assume that you are more fluent in the Isan dialect than the Central Thai.
Actually, it seemed that people didn't go that far with me. They figured, okay, if you can do Thai, then that's pretty good already. So we'll stick to Thai.
Okay.
Baby steps. I started doing a bit of practice in Isan much later on. But I guess because Korat's a very big city, it's still not in the deep part of Isan or northeast of town. So they actually speak Phasa Korat anyway, and not really Isan that much. So I picked up a bit of Isan, but much later when I started singing and learning Isan songs was when I learned a lot more.
I see. And this may sound like a funny question, but I still got to ask you. I mean, are you still fluent in the Swedish language?
Well, here's where it goes in terms of the ranking of my language abilities.
All right, let's hear it.
Number one is English because
Okay.
I switched. Actually, our whole family switched to English very early on when we moved to Thailand, just because there weren't enough Swedes around. Just to find a falang was hard enough.
So you speak English within your family?
So yes, especially at that time. Since my parents and the rest of my siblings moved back to Sweden, they have since switched back to Swedish. But I've been here this whole time, so I never really did the transition back, like with the rest of them. So I usually still speak English with my family.
Okay.
With my immediate family. So number one is English. Number two, actually, แซงตัดหน้าไปแล้วคือ ภาษาไทย
Okay.
Thai has now dethroned Swedish from my language ability, and Swedish is but I do speak Swedish. I think you can call it fluent. It's just that the vocabulary has become a bit hazy.
A bit rusty, maybe?
Yeah, it's very rusty. I don't use Swedish that much.
You think of a Swedish friend or maybe your grandmother. Do you dream of her and speak to her in Swedish?
In my dreams, and it's situational. You know, if it's a Swedish situation, yes, then I've got to do the Swedish thing, and it'll be just like real life. I might struggle with some terms or some vocabulary, but I will switch into Swedish in the dream. Yes.
Speaking of the Swedish language, how do Swedish people pronounce these following words?
Okay.
คนไทยเรียกอีเกียคนสวีเดนเรียกอะไรครับ
คนไทยถูกแล้วครับ เพราะมันคือ IKEA.
Okay, so the Americans saying IKEA, or that's wrong.
That's actually wrong. And in fact, I've had people correct me when I say IKEA because I've always called it IKEA. I mean, that's my language, right? No, isn't it IKEA? Dude, it's Swedish. I'm Swedish. No, it's IKEA, man.
Okay, so วันนี้คนไทยถูก IKEA. All
ถู
right.
กแล้ว
How about H&M?
H&M in Swedish is H&M. H&M.
Where's the and?
They drop it.
H&M.
Hua is H.
Okay.
Hua and M is M.
Okay.
So they don't. But if you were to say and in Swedish, it's ok. Hua or M.
Okay.
But in colloquial speaking, they just drop the and just say H&M.
H&M. Okay.
The name comes from Hennes och Mauritz. Hennes och Mauritz. It's two names, I guess, of designers, and then
I
they
see.
just change.
Volvo.
Volvo is Volvo.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
easy.
The same.
How about this one? Spotify.
It's also Spotify is a very anglicized word. I think it came from English more than Swedish, and there's no Swedish variant. It's just Spotify is Spotify.
Because some of my friends who are British, they go Spotify.
Yeah.
Spotify or something like that.
Well, see, Swedes are very connected. They're very internet savvy, so they actually, generally speaking, it's rare you find one that doesn't speak English. And they're very, with such connectivity on the internet and all that, they've actually adopted a lot more English words into Swedish speech. Some of them, they switch them into like a Swedish pronunciation, but some of them, they just keep them in the English translation. Spotify is a Swedish startup. But I've only ever heard it as Spotify.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, now moving on from the language part of things to your singing career. All right, so how did you become a singer, B. Jonas?
Well, I've always had that knack for singing, that love for singing, and I sang from a very early age. And in fact, as a family, my father played guitar, and we would sing, just not anything professional, just like for fun.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a seed planted from very early on, and it was just a natural bend for me, a natural talent. I started learning a lot of songs. In fact, as a teenager, I learned some Thai pop songs. My first song was ด้วยรักและผูกพัน by พี่เบิร์ดธงชัย
Oh, okay. He must be so proud of that fact.
I hope. I'm sure. He's a little inaccessible. But yes, that was my first Thai song.
Yeah.
And from that time, I learned a few Thai songs. And for me, the start in music was actually as a charity initiative. I attended a performing arts course with a group of friends. Actually, we were trained by someone from the U.S., a dance and performing arts teacher from New York. And after that, we formed a group. It's like a multi-performance group, primarily for charity initiatives. And actually, the most active project we had was in schools. It was an anti-narcotics program. We used song and dance and skits, performances and games to teach people of our same generation, really, about the dangers of drugs and to try to motivate them to stay away from drugs because the drug problem was quite severe at that time. This gave us a lot of flying time, or chamong bin as you call it in Thai. It was a lot of experience in a non-professional capacity, but in a lot of practice, a lot of real-world scenarios where so it created a real foundation for performing for me. And actually that sort of charity-based performing provided us with opportunity to make a little bit of money by performing at various events. At that time, it started to become a very big trend for big companies to arrange elaborate, events. So we actually got hired to perform at a lot of different New Year's and, various parties and so on. And it was because of that I was discovered by the host of T10 or at 10.
Okay.
P. Witawat actually was at an event, a countdown event, at the Royal Bangkok Sports Club. And at that time, we had started to adopt a few Luktung songs into our repertoire, which was it was like a gimmick. It was a novelty thing. For me, Luktung itself was almost an accident because it came about because a certain event that was hiring us to perform actually requested a song from the Monrak Luktung TV series. It was very, very big at the time. They said, "Oh, can you please sing this song?" And it was like, "Whoa, we don't really do Luktung. I mean, it's not really it's quite challenging, It's not an easy genre to sing." But like, no, it's a perfect fit for this event. We need this song, So like, okay, pedal to the metal and get down there in the grind and just we found ourselves a karaoke video of the song and just
what song
practiced
was that?
it. The song is Sanya Kon La. Sanya Kon La. It was because it was a farewell event. They were saying farewell to a retiring official, and so they wanted that song, and it was just at the time when the Lakon was super famous and all that. So Sanya Kon La has to be it. So it was actually with Christy Gibson as a duet, and it was just a sensational response. Like an amazing reaction that we'd never had before. We had a lot of, screaming and cheering crowds up until that point, especially when we did shows in schools. But that day was just something completely magical.
Right.
It was just this connect that we never had before. And it sort of lit a light bulb a little bit like, hey, this is something we need to try to explore a bit further.
Right.
And actually the second song was also a bit forced. It was also from an event. And after that, I just started learning a few Luktung songs. And then at this event, this countdown event at New Year's Eve, where Kun Witawat was there, he called me over and said, "Hey, have you ever been on TV?" And I actually, to be honest, I didn't know who he was.
Okay.
Of course, any artist would be like, "Wow, this is my big moment," but I didn't really have that deep connection with the entertainment industry in Thailand. So I didn't even know. I'm like, yeah, great.
Yeah, great. What's your name, by the way?
Something like that.
Okay.
Sure, I can fit in my schedule for you.
So you went on his show.
Yeah, it was actually I'd totally forgotten. The team from his program didn't contact us till like 6 months later.
Okay.
I guess they just slotted us into the idea pool, and then 6 months later they call us up and say, "Okay, so and by then we had a few more songs." So I went on the show and it was like an overnight sensation. Suddenly everyone recognized me. It was just very surreal to me.
Right.
Once the show was aired, I was like, "Whoa! How does everyone know me now?" But that kind of launched a Luktung career for me. After that, there was different record labels contacting me and everything. And I was quite hesitant, actually, at first. I had a kind of a negative impression of the entertainment industry.
Why is that?
I don't know. It felt fake to me. It felt insincere. You know, for us, music had always been very, very grounded, very purposeful, you know, with a real, genuine purpose. And I didn't want to just be a guy on stage purely for entertainment. But what I discovered through mentoring of Thai trainers and so on was that actually this was a very powerful opportunity to be a sounding board for Thai culture as the white guy who sings Luk Thung. You know? And it actually ended up being a very meaningful thing because and very much along the lines of what I would like to do with music, and that is to not just entertain or sing a song or make people laugh. That's part of it, but really there's got to be some base of
Communication?
of quality communication and substance. You know, there needs to be something there that's communicated, not just doing the communicating, but actually what you're saying. And with Luk Thung, that was totally clear because it could express very effectively what I felt, my genuine appreciation for Thailand, my genuine appreciation for the Thai culture, the Thai people. It was like painting a picture of what Thainess is.
So what is Thainess?
To me, Thainess is really about the people. It's about the human element. I think that you can have cultural elements, and they're always going to be slightly colored in different ways. But there's a lot of bleed over with culture. Like you'll find that even Thai food, you know, there's influences from Chinese food, from Indian food. There's and Thais have this amazing ability to make it their own and unique and better. Better than the original, like to the point where the original kind of fades away and Thai becomes the new standard. And I think that grows across a lot of cultural boundaries, like with music too, and dance. You know, in Thai dance, and the real core of it, you'll find Indian influences, you'll find, you know, Malay influences, and of course, there's their own unique aspect. But over time, these things blend, and you can of course appreciate any culture because it's like richness, it's identity. But for me, what makes Thai culture stand apart and be special and unique is the human element, and that is this charm, and this authenticity, this genuineness that you find in Thais. Like you talk about Thailand, the land of smiles, but a smile can be super fake. But in Thailand, it's not. It feels like it comes out from inside, you know. Especially in entertainment, you got to put on your smile like that immediately, right? But when Thais smile and when they laugh, you know, it's just from the inside. It's real, and when they treat you, when they welcome you, when they take you around, it never feels like it's something forced or that they feel kind of obliged to do it, like they have to do it. It comes from inside. They feel a joy in that. They feel happy. That's why it's very, very hard for anyone to properly compete with Thai levels of service. Because no matter how much training you have, you can't train yourself into something real that's from the inside. You have to actually embrace that from in the internal level.
Right. Now, the first time you heard a Luk Thung song, let's go back a bit. How did that make you feel? What was your initial reaction towards playing Luk Thung?
Well, to me, Luk Thung was a little foreign to me, but the real bridge for me with Luk Thung, the real bridge was Pum Puang. When I was a teenager, Pum Puang was like a massive icon, and she, of course, is famous and known and an icon in Luk Thung specifically, but there's so much joy and so much rhythm and happiness and color in her music that it's kind of like it breaks down any barriers and walls.
And at that time, you weren't as fluent in Thai as you were today.
No, I wasn't for sure. And so I don't know if I got the meaning of the lyrics at a very deep level, and certainly I wouldn't know idiosyncrasies or idioms in it, but it was just fun. It felt like Thailand in music.
And Jonas, do you write your own songs?
For Thai, this is a beast I haven't really conquered yet. I've done a bit. In fact, after my first solo album, I wanted to do kind of like a my story song, something that expressed myself. It's very typical to Luk Tung to have kind of playing Chiwit, they call it. It's not playing Pua Chiwit, it's playing Chiwit Kong Silapin from the artist. So I wanted to do that, and so I jumped in and went ahead and composed a song that was actually released in my fourth album. In my third album. It was actually, it's called Yak Ben Kon Thai.
Oh, Yak Ben Kon Thai.
Yak Ben Kon Thai is the I Want to Be Thai.
Okay.
Was the name of the song. And actually I played on the Farang term a little bit. Not again because I'm offended by the term, but just as a way of communicating that feeling. So the song went Ya riak farang dai mai kwan ta. So it's like basically it's supposed to be like a very sweet Luk Tung personal song. I've shied away from seriously getting into writing my own songs in Thai. I've written a lot more in English, but in Thai not so much because I feel like it's a bit sacred. It's kind of it's a very elevated form of art that requires a lot of levels of understanding, and songwriting in Thai is extremely limited by the rules of Thai pronunciation.
Not the grammar, pronunciation.
No, pronunciation because of tones. Like we talked about that little song that I learned.
Sawadee Krap.
Yeah, you can't do that in a song or you're going to look a little bit weird unless it's for a humor element, like Tok Jai or something like that. If you say Tok Jai, it could be okay like a kamutan in a song, but you wouldn't make that the main framework of your songwriting. And so for me to comply with those rules, which I would definitely want to do, and also to make the song a very deep form of communication, I feel like I'd prefer to leave that to the experts, to the masters, and I feel very honored already just to be able to communicate those songs, those messages.
Right. The song you mentioned, Yak Ben Kon Thai.
Yes.
Right. Do you really want to Yak Ben Kon Thai? I mean, how is it different from your status now, living and being happy in Thailand?
Well, I mean, I'm privileged to have much of my life be very Thai, but to be honest, yes, I very much would like to be Thai. I would like to have a Bat Prachashon Thai.
Okay.
Which I haven't been able to get yet. I would genuinely. I don't, by saying Yak Ben Kon Thai, it doesn't mean I don't want to be Swedish. I don't think that they cancel each other out. I think that we can be multiple nationalities, but I would like to have the validation of actually being Thai.
Right.
Very much so.
So you could vote or perhaps vote out some politicians that you dislike.
Let's just start with buying property first before we go to politics.
Okay. Yeah, that's one thing about property.
It could be nice to be able to own some land in Thailand. I consider Thailand my home, but I don't, as a non-Thai, you don't have the right to own land. It would be nice. You can do it in some sense, but it's not really authentically, genuinely owning the land.
Right. Or maybe marry a Thai and have her own the land.
Yeah, but I mean, that would be maybe a process. It would be a process, but it still wouldn't fully be that sense of ownership personally on
Very
a personal
true.
level.
Indeed,
It's not really the land, but it's just it's a bit.
It's that feeling.
Yeah, it's a sense.
Yeah,
It's
all
a
right.
sense. Yeah.
Cool. Now, songs from different cultures, from different countries reflect that society.
Yeah.
What does Luk Tung song reflect?
Actually, it's interesting because the handle that people use to refer to Thai luktung is Thai country. And of course, country is a very big genre itself. In the US, it's a massive industry. And luktung is nothing like country western. But there is a place where they meet. And that is that country music tends to be very, very simple in its meaning, very attainable, you know, and very relatable. And I think that's very much the way that luktung can be described.
Right.
Luktung, as a musical form, is a fusion of a lot of ancient or local folk styles of music. So then that gives it a certain depth in the music.
Right.
But in the messages of luktung, what's cool about it is that it's not dressed up, it's not pompous or distant. It's very relatable. It talks about your real life, everyday things, the stuff you got to face in love or in hardship or in happiness, whatever it is. And I love the fact that luktung, it just says what it says. It doesn't have to dress it up.
The genuinity.
Yeah, it's very authentic in the messages.
I see. Do you sing in other languages? Have you ever tried putting Swedish language into your songs?
I've sung some Swedish folk songs for events. When I started my career as a luktung artist in Thailand, there was a very big excitement among the Swedish community at the time. You know, they were very proud to have a Swede, a very typical-looking blonde Swede up on stage doing Thai music. So there were a number of events, and in fact, there was a lot of coverage in Swedish media. Thais may not know that all of the main news outlets in Swedish covered me at some point. In some way.
Hey, look at Jonas.
Jonas.
Yeah, Jonas. Hey, look at Jonas.
Yeah.
He's famous in Thailand.
From the very beginning, there were a lot of local stringers, a lot of local media people for Swedish news outlets that covered me and put me in their newspapers. But one of the events that I'm extremely proud of is actually being able to be the first singer of luktung, I believe. I can't imagine there would ever be any other, to actually perform luktung live with dancers on Swedish TV.
Okay.
On a morning show in Sweden. I think that your only way to compare it to a Thai program would be เรื่องเล่าเช้านี้ So if you want to do entertainment and a breakfast show, then เรื่องเล่าเช้านี้ is kind of the holy grail, right? And this is the Swedish equivalent of that.
Wow.
I had to get up at 4 a.m. and be on set and practice and set up the instruments and everything, but I'm very proud to have actually brought Thai music, Thai luktung music, onto live Swedish television.
Wow.
With Thai dancers, actually, and a Thai band.
So you all flew over there for this event?
It was actually a promotion for an event that was held at the oldest theater in Sweden, an over 150-year-old theater, which more recently has been shifting over to a lot of cultural acts. And Swedes actually are very, very fond of Thailand. They love Thailand. In the normal situation, hundreds of thousands of Swedes come to Thailand every day, every year. So yeah, I at that event I sang a Swedish song, but I've never mixed a Swedish with Thai songs. But I have done that in English. I actually translated the very challenging song Ya Yot Pala into English. And recorded it for a school in Phra province, which is where the legend of Pralaw comes from.
Can we hear a verse?
Goodness, I can't remember it now. I don't have it with me. I can't remember it, no. But actually, Ya Yot Pala is a song that most singers would really avoid covering because Chinakon Grailat sang it so incredibly well that it's kind of like no one wanted to touch it. But then this one school teacher wanted to inspire her students to learn English in a unique way. So she actually did a draft of a translation of the story of Pralaw, the song Yawar Pralaw, into English. It was a good translation as a translation, but it wasn't a song. So I had to take it, and it took hours. It was days of work trying to fit the English words into all of those.
So they rhyme and
melodies. Yeah, the rhyme and also mostly the intonations and fitting it in so it doesn't sound weird.
Yeah.
That was quite a challenge for me, but then I actually got to go up to Phra and sing it with a local Thai band called Salo Saw Sing in Phra province and perform it up there. And it was quite amazing. And actually, because of that, my mentor, my teacher in Luktung, decided for me to sing the Thai version of Yoyot Pala in my second album. Yeah.
Wow, makes perfect sense.
So it's an interesting experience. I've totally lost that. It's a sad loss. I don't know where it is. I don't know how to find it. Yeah.
Now, your folks decided to move back to Sweden, but you chose to stay. Why was that?
It might have been a combination of teenage rebellion and independence and just feeling very at home here. I was kind of like, well, I don't want to uproot. I don't want to leave. I find this to be my home. I feel at home here. And I think the biggest reason at the time was really because I was very active in a lot of activities at the time. I was actually studying sound engineering at the time as a course, like an elective course, and I was doing the performing arts thing, and we were starting up our group, and there was just a lot going on that I was very excited about. So I didn't even consider, actually. Wow. I didn't even consider leaving at the time.
So you were left alone, pretty much.
Actually, my next brother, who's 2 years younger than me, he stayed on at first as well for a couple of years. Yeah, a couple of years after they left, he wanted to stay as well. It was probably 100% teenage rebellion in his case.
All right.
Well, no disrespect to my brother, but yeah.
Okay.
Possibly.
So what is that one thing that you love most about Thailand?
To recap on that, I have to just put it on the people, the authenticity. So the thing I love the most about Thailand, and I don't think, I would never say there's one thing I love about Thailand, because there's a plethora of things that I love about Thailand. There's a multitude of things I love about Thailand. But if I have to pick one, it's definitely going to be the people. That sincere hospitality they have, that genuine love for people and care for people, and I think it plays out in Thai society. Now, of course, you've got political movements, you've got this and that and the other, but at the end, I really believe in the Thai culture to hold true and stay true in Thailand. At the end of the day, when there's a crisis, Thais get together. They help each other out. They support one another, and they get that job done together.
Right.
They're not a disunited people. They're a united people, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And it's why it's such a sensation that so many people are in love with Thailand and want to visit Thailand and come back, and tourism and everything is so powerful here, because it's an experience that you don't find elsewhere.
Right. Now, on the other hand, if you could fix one thing in this country, what would you like to see be fixed?
Traffic.
And it's not just Bangkok anymore, lots of big
It's starting
cities.
to go elsewhere. Yeah. No, but I mean, no complaints. It's a big city. There's a lot of cars, so it's hard to fix.
All right.
If I could fix it, I would. Yes, I would. Traffic is a simple one. But, I'm not, of course, you can have your arguments on social issues or political issues or whatever, but I just feel I'm not going to weigh in on that. It's not my job to try to analyze how political issues can be fixed. And the fact of the matter is that it's a global thing. Everywhere, it doesn't matter where you are, there's going to be political issues. Unless it's a straight up dictatorship, and then it's its own form of political issues. So I think that there's going to be problems everywhere. It's not about the problems, it's about how you approach those problems. And so I'll stay simple.
Of all these years living in Thailand, what is the most important lesson that you've learned?
For me, I feel like part of my identity is social work. Part of my identity is charity work. And I find that a very big aspect of Thainess, of Jai Bun, is a very big influence on that. It's really influenced me at a deep level, and I think that culture spreads into Thailand. And I've been in Thailand when the tsunami happened.
2004
and the response to that, everyone getting behind it, helping out. I've been in Thailand when big floods have happened in Bangkok and elsewhere in other provinces. And every time there's a crisis, Thais get together and get behind it. Even with COVID, I feel like there's this sense of unity that makes Thailand stand apart. And I think that that's an amazing lesson to learn.
right a great example for pretty much the
I
world
mean, let's face it, Thailand is the example right now as far as handling the COVID-19 crisis.
right นะฮะไม่น่าเชื่อนะฮะกับการพูดคุยกับนักร้องในดวงใจของผมคนหนึ่งนะฮะอย่างพี่โจนาสเนี่ยจะทำให้เราได้ผมได้ละกันใช้คำนี้นะฮะได้มุมมองที่เกี่ยวกับคนหนึ่งที่เกี่ยวกับสังคมที่เกี่ยวกับประเทศหนึ่งนะฮะเกี่ยวกับภาษาหนึ่งก็คือของไทยเราทั้งหมดเนี่ยทำให้มีมุมมองที่แตกต่างเกิดขึ้นได้นะฮะจริงๆนี่ไม่ใช่ครั้งแรกที่ผมได้คุยกับพี่โจนัสนะฮะครั้งแรกเนี่ยก็คือคุยกันในรายการEnglish Breakfast รายการสอนภาษาอังกฤษของผมก่อนอันนี้แต่ตอนนั้นคือก็ด้วยความที่เราเน้นสนุกเน้นตลกเน้นหามาตรงนี้นะฮะเชื่อว่าจากโรงเรียนนานาชาติจากสิ่งที่เราได้พูดกันตรงนี้นอกจากการเรียนรู้ภาษาอังกฤษแล้วเนี่ยสิ่งที่เราได้ในแง่คิดในมุมมองในมิติที่พี่โจนัสได้สะท้อนความเป็นไทยทั้งหมดนี้มาเนี่ยเชื่อเหลือเกินว่าเราได้เรียนรู้อะไรหลายๆอย่างจากชายคนนี้ครับคุณยูนอสแอนเดอร์สัน is that how to pronounce it again
Jonas Andersson
คุณต้องขอบคุณครับคุณยูนัสอันเดอร์ชอน
well done
ขอบคุณพี่โจนัสมากนะครับพี่
ดีมากครับยินดีครับขอบคุณมากเลยนะครับทีมอเดย์ทุกคนนะครับขอบคุณมากครับ
ขอบคุณครับ
ติดตาม A Day Podcast ได้ทาง adaymagazine.com Joox Apple Podcast Spotify Podbean SoundCloud และ A Day Magazine YouTube Channel